We'll continue to monitor NFL free agency. Raheem Mostert going to the Raiders. I just saw that in the past few minutes. Do you know what happened on this day in South Florida sports? This is one of the most consequential days in South Florida sports history. Do you know what happened on this day in the year 2000?
Big Danny hung it up.
You are correct. Dan Marino hung it up on this day 25 years ago.
I watched the press conference this morning on Twitter. That's why I know.
I saw it too.
He did his press conference.
Yeah, I saw it too.
That was a bad man there.
I'm looking on Wikipedia. These are some of the quarterbacks Miami's had since and during Dan Marino's era. Because when he really was the starter, Kyle Mackey was the backup. Anybody remember him? Scott Mitchell, of course, Steve DeBerg, Bernie Kosar, Craig Erickson from the U. Well, Bernie Kosar from the U. Craig Erickson as well was a backup. Damon Heward. I believe we talked about Brock Heward yesterday.
And Josh McCown for some reason. I don't know.
Then Jay Fiedler took over. There was Ray Lucas, Brian Griese, A.J. Feely, Sage Rosenfels, Gus Farrat, Dante Culpepper, Joey Harrington, Cleo Lemon, Trent Green, John Beck, Tyler Thigpen, Matt Moore, Ryan Tannehill, Jay Cutler, Brock Osweiler, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Josh Rosen for a cup of coffee. Then came Tua. You've had Jacoby Brissett, Teddy Bridgewater, Skylar Thompson, Tyler Huntley, Tim Boyle. But, man, for you people who don't like Tua, if you just heard some of the names that I've mentioned to you, you better go deep into the thinking bank before you bring me your anti-Tua slander.
I think I counted 10 that I played with, and if you saw my head, I was shaking it no to some of them because goodness gracious.
I always make this point, Hoch, but the list you just rattled off, I was 5 when Dan Marino retired.
So that's all you know.
That's all I know. Like think about that.
Yeah, it's. I mean it is such a feudal. Now I love Tua, and I think like if you had to rank, well, I can tell you. So Pro Football Network ranked, according to them, the 10 greatest quarterbacks in Miami Dolphins history. Okay, Pro Football Network.
Yeah,
the 10 greatest quarterbacks in Miami Dolphins history. And when I give you number 10, you're going to realize how slim the pickings have been since Dan Marino. Because number 10 is Matt Moore.
Whoa.
The 10th best quarterback in Dolphins history. Again, according to Pro Football Network. Number 9, Ryan Fitzpatrick.
So backup quarterbacks. You're doing backup quarterbacks here. Gotcha.
Anyone who has played quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. Matt Moore did start some games. Ryan Fitzpatrick started some games.
Those guys make a top 10 list of Dolphins quarterbacks?
Did you just hear the list that Hoch read off?
Who got snubbed in the first two? Cleo Lemon?
Well, Jay Fiedler's number 3 then. Like, if I'm just extrapolating it all out. If Matt Moore, and by the way, I was one of those fools chanting for Matt Moore over Ryan Tannehill at the Hard Rock Stadium, but I was also drunk doing it. Like, if Matt Moore is considered a top 10 quarterback, and then Ryan Fitzpatrick, who had one good play against the Las Vegas Raiders that nobody was even in the stadium to witness, is a top 10 quarterback in Dolphins history, then there's no top 10 list. You started at 5.
Well, that's what I'm telling you. For everyone who complains about Tua, you're out of your bleeping minds. It's the best quarterback we've seen since Dan Marino. There's no, I mean, that's out of the, that's not up for debate. You can debate whether Bob Griese's better than Tua, whether Earl Morrill, Don Strock, but since Dan Marino, it's Dan Marino and Tua and everyone else. Like, those guys are head and shoulders above everyone else.
That's what I was going to say. The 70s guys. Griese and Morale and them. I'm wondering where they are on the list, if they're over Tua or not. But the 90s to 2025, Tua got all them dudes. I played with 10 of them.
Matt
Tua's
Moore,
better
10.
than those fellas.
Ryan Fitzpatrick, 9. David Woodley, 8. He was from the earlier era. Chad Pennington, 7. You played with Chad Pennington.
CP could go.
Jay Fiedler, 6. Earl Morrill, 5. Ryan Tannehill, 4. Tua, third best quarterback in Dolphins history. Bob Griese, 2. And Dan Marino, 1.
I don't want to sound crazy, but Tua might got Bob Griese.
I never really saw him play, so I don't know, and I didn't live down here then. So
this was a different style of football, but I don't know success. Bob had more success on the field, but just slinging that biscuit, spinning that thing. Bob wasn't spinning that thing like Tua was spinning that thing.
He won.
Why'd you look shocked so long? I said I'd never
Bowls.
seen Bob Griese.
No. I'm saying like he was a starting quarterback for 2 Super Bowls, and he completed a pass. That to me already puts him ahead of Tua Tagovailoa.
That's what. So he should be over Dan because Dan has 0 Super Bowls.
No, well, Dan Marino.
He got you there. He got you there.
No, he didn't. He didn't.
Yeah, he did.
He didn't. No, he didn't. Because
He
Dan
did.
Marino, for a decade plus, was considered the best passer in the game and is still widely considered one of the greatest passers in the game. We're comparing
you're
apples to
describing
oranges.
Tua as well.
Okay, I'm not.
Solana, I'm not. Listen, I'm not taking away anything from Bob. But Tua was better at throwing a football than Bob Griese was.
Right, but like that, no joke. That's the same thing as me saying Derrick Jones Jr. is a better basketball player than Dr.
Bob
J.
Cousy.
Which right, it's ridiculous, right? It's ridiculous because of what those guys accomplished. But in theory, I might be right. Derrick Jones Jr. is 10 times the athlete than anybody those guys played back in the 50s and 60s.
But Dr. J played in the 70s and 80s. I'm not certain Dr. J is the right, but Bob Cousy is more a better example than that, because I would take Dr. J. I would take Dr. J over Derrick Jones Jr. today.
Just Bob Griese had a 56% completion percentage. Tua just set NFL records over 70. Bob averaged 2,600 yards a season. Tua hits 4,000 whenever he wants to.
But
Like,
in fairness, you were literally allowed to drape yourself over a receiver to break up a pass. Like
it's
not
there is
apples
a
to
conversation. Yes, yeah. And Bob could get his helmet knocked off and throw it into the third row, and you had to worry about that. Tua gets flicked in the ear, and they're going to call a 15-yard penalty. Different errors, but Bob's had more success than Tua.
Yeah, that's unquestionable. Yeah. All right, let's do headline.
He also had maybe the greatest running back duo in the history of the NFL in Mercury Morris and Larry Zonka. I mean, they're handing off the pigskin to them, Crowder. I'm sorry, but I mean, if Tua had Mercury Morris and Larry Zonka, I'd be cool with him only throwing for 2,500 yards.
Yeah, we have Kalen Ballage. Come on, man. Like
Achan and Wright and Raheem.
Achan and Wright.
All right, let's do headlines here because Jim Larinaga is going to join us. Headlines brought to you by Doral Hyundai. Choose from over 1,300 new Hyundai models in inventory like the Tucson, Sonata, and Palisade. And remember, when it comes to Hyundai, the great deals are at Doral Hyundai.
I'll start with the Miami Dolphins. They made a signing today, and you're right, Raheem Mostert, according to Fox, has headed to the Las Vegas Raiders. The Dolphins are signing linebacker KJ Britt. He was on Tampa Bay. The Dolphins had Anthony Walker Jr., and they essentially just swapped today because Anthony Walker Jr. goes to the Buccaneers. KJ Britt joins the Miami Dolphins. And I was reading in the Miami Herald from Barry Jackson, the Dolphins essentially got a similar player in terms of production, but a younger player.
All right.
So those are your three inside linebackers: Jordan Brooks, Tyrell Dodson, who they signed the other day,
Why are you laughing,
and
Crowder?
KJ Britt.
Because now I'm down the wormhole of Bob Griese. In two of his Super Bowls, he played
with eras. You can't do this with eras.
2 of his Super Bowls he played in, he was 8 for 11 and 6 of 7.
Stop it.
Is he winning the Super Bowl at 6 of 7?
Stop it. He threw 7 passes an entire Super Bowl?
Yes.
Are you sure the page you're looking at loaded all the way?
Washington Super Bowl at Washington, 8 of 11 versus Minnesota, 6 of 7. The other Super Bowl, 12 of 23.
Very different era. Very different era.
Bob Griese didn't even play during that 72 season in the regular season. He got hurt. I think, wasn't it Earl Morrall?
It was Earl Morrall.
Who was the starting quarterback, and then they pulled poor Earl Morrall in the playoffs. They put Griese back in there, and he ended up winning like the AFC Championship game and the Super Bowl.
That's why Earl's on the list, because Earl could play, and they had to replace him when Griese got hurt. Yeah.
At least his stats show up. Remember, Hoch? We tried to look up Crowder stats in that cold weather game in Cincinnati or in Kansas City. You didn't even have a ant tackle in that game, not one.
There's more proof that Wilt Chamberlain scored 100 points in a game, and there's no proof than you actually having played in that game in Kansas City. You say you played in.
I was taking on some blockers. I was turning it back inside. I was a contained guy.
So was Bob Griese in the Super Bowl.
So by Crowder's breakdown, Garo Yepremian, who is a Dolphins kicker, is greater to Dolphins 72-73 back-to-back title lore than Bob Griese. That's your take. You want to sign that take?
Not my take. No, I'm not talking about the lore and Super Bowl success. I'm talking about, is Bob Griese a better quarterback than Tua Tagovailoa? And I would say 8 of 11 in the Super Bowl is a little different.
Man, it's a pretty good completion percentage, to be quite honest.
88 yards.
This feels like it's not right. Is this right?
No, I gotta go to 73 Super Bowl. This can't be.
When did the NFL implement the shotgun? Didn't the Dallas Cowboys do that? They're the first team to
Roger Staubach. Yeah.
When was that?
That'd be in the 70s. I mean, yeah, there was a shotgun in the 70s because Roger Staubach and Danny White, I mean, those were 70s, early 80s. I think they ran a very conservative offense, the Dolphins.
I'm on Wikipedia. 8 of 11 for 88 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception.
How many total yards did they have in the Super Bowl?
They had 184 rushing yards and 88 receiving yards.
People took the under.
They ran the ball 37 times. They threw the ball 11.
That's what Wanstead was trying to get back to with Ricky.
They were leading on Bob. It's crazy. Looking at these old games, it's crazy.
Yeah, but Garo Yepremian.
All right, enough. We gotta get through headline. We got all day to do this. Did you see Cooper Flagg got injured in the Duke game, the ACC tournament?
Yes. Yeah. That's sad. Yeah, he's in a wheelchair.
They wheeled him off. Yeah.
Ooh.
Actually, he walked off.
Not serious.
But in the tunnel, when he was going to get an X-ray, they put him in a wheelchair.
He's about to be the first pick in the draft if everything goes right.
Yep.
Every day on the show this week during free agency, we've brought up another quarterback who has signed elsewhere and compared him to Zach Wilson, who the Dolphins signed to be their own backup. Today, I present to you Mac Jones, who yesterday agreed to terms with the 49ers, 2-year deal worth $7 million. Zach Wilson's making $6 million in one season. 49ers got Mac Jones, 2 years, $7 million.
Yeah, I didn't want Mac Jones either, so I'm okay with that.
Nope.